Now, BP has announced that they will be growing investments in oil and gas production and slashing those in green energy. France 24's Antonia Kerrigan joins us on set to talk us through this announcement. Antonia, good to see you. Now, BP's announcement sort of flies in the face of the direction they were heading in, but it seems that they're not alone.
That's quite right. So when you look at BP's trajectory, back in 2020, they announced their net zero objectives, how they plan to get to net zero by 2050. And it was a plan to reduce oil and gas production by 40% by 2030. And the announcement was as well, no new oil and gas exploration in any new currently uninvested in countries. However, since then, the tide's clearly turned. Profits took a hit in 2024, by which I don't mean it stopped being profitable. Profits were just smaller. Dividends were smaller. And now they're calling a reset. The new CEO has said this is a reset BP with an unwavering focus on growing long-term shareholder value. How does he plan to get there? Well, the pivot is boosting fossil fuel investment to $10 billion per year, cutting what they call the transition business. So that's all things renewable, EV batteries, also hydrogen, cutting that to just 1.5 to 2 billion a year. And when you read the announcement, when you look at the text of it, the words they're using for investment in these transition industries are things like disciplined, selective, focused, and capital light. They're going to keep these investments capital light, which you might say is code for the absolute bare minimum. Now, they're not alone, as you say. Just last year, Shell announced that they were reducing their green ambitions. They had planned a 45% cut in their carbon intensity by 2035. The new CEO said that any such plans were perilous and scrapped them. More recently, you've got Equinor, the Norwegian oil company, who used to be called State Oil, who rebranded in 2018, no doubt to part with that extremely fossil fuel heavy image that they had. They've recently announced that they will be halving renewables investment in the next 2 years and upping oil and gas production. The reason given, they don't see the necessary profitability in these energies for the future. So this is a whole industry, unashamedly, you might say shamelessly, putting profitability over all else, including accompanying the green transition.
Antonia, no one really ever thought that oil and gas companies would suddenly turn into tree huggers, but what has changed? Is it Donald Trump and his pledge to drill, baby, drill?
That's certainly a part of it. It's certainly not the science that's changed. Last year was the hottest year on record. Scientists remain unanimous. The phase out of fossil fuels needs to happen urgently, and climate change is already costing countless lives. But as you say, the US is the world's biggest energy market. Their leader wants to drill, baby, drill. As you say, we never expected the oil majors to sacrifice profitability at the altar of the environment. That was never something we thought would happen. But there was a brief idea that being socially and environmentally responsible could be in some way a value add for companies. There was a brief phase for what was called ESG, environmental, social governance investing, which peaked in the last couple of years and now seems to be over. Now, when you hear this language of profitability, you can really tell that these oil and gas companies are talking to shareholders. They're not talking to environmentally minded governments or concerned civil society. Greenpeace called the BP announcement today positive proof that fossil fuel companies can't or won't be part of climate crisis solutions. And if that's true, where does that leave us? We'll still need energy, so it's going to really matter what governments do next.